And welcome to the Missouri MUFON and KUNX Digital Broadcasting Network combined monthly presentation. We talk about UFOs, and tonight will be no exception. I'm Margie Kay. I'm the Assistant State Director for Missouri MUFON and the owner of the KUNX Network. This evening, our guest speaker is Larry Tyree. He has a master's degree from seminary school and worked for 18 years as Director of International Translations for a global denomination. He grew up in French Polynesia, where he learned 3 languages, and he is currently fluent in 5 languages. Larry is an investigator with the Illinois chapter of the Mutual UFO Network. He also assists MUFON investigators by examining video evidence and providing an analysis of the video. Larry has been a frequent presenter at local and state MUFON chapter meetings and paranormal conferences. His presentations include topics such as discoveries on the moon and Mars, solar visitors, fast movers, and highlights of his own sightings. He has had a number of his investigatory cases highlighted in the national publication, the MUFON Journal, over the last several years. One recent case was included in UFO Cases of Interest, the 2019 edition. Welcome, Larry.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here.
And I will give you the floor.
Okay, let me get the screen share here. Okay. Now let's see. Are you seeing the side view, Margie?
Yes. No,
Alright,
not seeing
okay.
the side view. We're just not seeing. If you would hit from beginning, probably that will do it.
Yeah, that can do it. Okay. And that's going across all right?
No, it's still not doing the slideshow. It's showing the slides on the left side. It's not doing full screen.
That's weird. That's just, I'm seeing it. Well, let's see.
Maybe slideshow from current slide.
Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it. It's still not in full screen. It was
Margie,
working a minute ago.
I can see it,
Yeah.
slideshow.
Yeah, we can all still see it.
No, in the middle, not only on the side.
But you can see the larger screen now, right?
I can.
Well, it's
Um,
large enough. It's not full screen, but it's large enough.
Is that any better?
There we go.
Okay, sorry about that. Let me just say at the beginning, on occasion, I've been having the screen locking up and I've had to reboot. So if that happens, bear with me. It'll be about 2-3 minutes before I can get logged back in. I'm not sure what's going on that, but hopefully it won't happen anymore. Anyway, how did I get started in this about cubes? I got interested in cubes mainly while I was working on a case last October. And at the time I thought a cube might be involved, but it turned out otherwise. That still got me kind of interested in the topic. And the more I found, the more I became even more intrigued. So this is the result. If we go back till year 2010 to last year, this is the way the number of sightings that have been seen, and this is the unknown sighting, the ones that have been verified by field investigators. So you can see that from 2010 at least to 23, there's been a gradual but very steady increase. If we go back and look by decade, it goes way back to the 60s. There was 3 in the 60s, 3 in the 70s, 2 in the 80s, 6 in the 90s, 16 in the 2000s, and then since 2010, it's just really shot up. When you look at MUFON totals of different kinds of shapes of objects, where does that fall? Well, first of all, cubes are not listed as one of the shapes that you can pick. The others, I've included it just for comparison, but it's not included in the shapes. And you see the various ones there. The number one shape is the sphere, and got that highlighted in yellow. And over time in the MUFON record, and this is as of December 31st of 2023. I went into the MUFON case system, and these are the numbers. That's just total sighting or reports. That doesn't mean that's how many were actually found to be genuine unknowns, which means more of a bona fide case. Interestingly, there's if we look at the unknown just for the spheres, and I just did it on a couple just to get an idea. It turns out that 35.2% of the spheres, which is rather high for the general cases that MUFON sees, were considered unknown. The cubes, when you look at just the one that MUFON plus, and I added NUFORC, which had just a few. Turned out there were 359 in the unknown category. When you divide them into the larger number of how many were totally reported, it was about 35%. Now, down in the square and rectangle category, I wonder about that because if you look at a square or a rectangle, it's not going to just be just a flat square, and that there's going to be depth to it. And so, is there a possibility that there could also be what we currently refer to as cubes in that category? Well, it's something at least to entertain a notion about. MUFON case 1870-701 in the fall of 21 showed a case that was first observed at the 21.5 degrees altitude. The object was seen at towards the northwest in the direction of the airport this is in Springfield, Missouri. And it was about, which is 7.3 miles away from where the witness was at. Here's just, there was a video showing a cube-like object that was rapidly spinning, and it was going in all directions. And so when you get a frame here, sometimes you see two or three, sometimes it's just one. Whether they were actually morphing or not is not really known, but it was moving fast enough that it could have been a blur. Regardless, it was one that was interesting, very interesting. That was this other case in April of 21 in the Southwest Missouri had a case of about 5 fast movers in it, and one of them just happened to be very square-like. And when you enhance the images, you can see that it's really very, very square. And it begins precisely at this point. It didn't appear in the video until that point, and then it continued on for a few frames. And in El Paso, Texas, in June of 2015, Walter Lenz was leaving his office about 1 in the afternoon to go to lunch, and he said it was starting to get really windy, and he noticed that the center of some swirling clouds became much darker than the other clouds around them. You can kind of see that happening over to the far left over here, in which something was taking place. And this does the man is snapping the photo. He caught this in the image coming out of the cloud. Now this image is lightened from this one here, so that you can be seen a little easier. But this looks, very, very cube-like, obviously. And the cube it didn't completely come out, but would go back into the clouds in and out a number of times. That's his finger pointing up towards it. And then here's another image that looks a bit different from the other one in that it's more elongated. Something about the photo made me start to wonder, is this photo really authentic? It looks different enough from the other one that, is there a possibility that this has been copied in there? So I started to look at it from several perspectives. One of them was if you're looking at an image and one of the things you want to do is check the lighting. Is it in keeping with where, say the sun is in this particular case? And I drew a line going from where the sun is to where the object is, and it appears that the lighting, at least from that perspective, is correct, if that's to be considered authentic. Error level analysis is another way of doing it, ELA for short. And this is a comparison. On the right is the original image that I showed previously, and then the left one is ELA. And you can see where the writing here at the top really stands out in bright white. And whenever something is copied in, it usually is very stark. The thing about this one is it contains basically the same kinds of colors of pixels that the rest of the image has as well. So from this perspective, at least, we can see that this is the obvious addition at the beginning of the top here. And here's an example of how to look at ELA. In this top left image, we see a number of books and so on. And then when you perform ELA on that image, everything's showing up in different contrasts, but in many similar colors. But in this particular case, you do see, of course, the individual objects. One thing to note is on the far left here, this one book that's solid light gray, almost white, goes up into black, and white tends to do that. White images under ELA tend to become black. One glaring difference is this one here, where you see it says hack proofing on the side of the spine. Well, the reason you don't see much over here is because there's a lot of, you have the blue in the first place, and so that's interrupting the pixelation and how things are distributed. So it doesn't, in that particular case, when there's others to disturb the entire image and the pixels that are nearby, you don't see the same effect. Solid black doesn't necessarily show up as black either. In this case, it has, you can see that there's some reflection from the flash, which there's some as well down here. You just don't see it as well, but it's definitely lighter. And you see that spread across the spine. Now, in this next one, you see the orange and the sort of greenish book here are copied to the left and to the right. and you see a toy dinosaur that's added as well to the image. And when you run the ELA on this particular image, this modified image, you'll see that there's very definitely something copied there. And you see how it's filled in the whole thing. It's not just an outline. The same thing with the toy dinosaur. Now, at the same time in El Paso, there was another lady who was getting ready to go somewhere, and she was not wanting to give her name, but she happened to see this and snapped a quick image. But she was obviously a bit, perhaps I'm assuming a bit closer. This could have been telephoto as well. But the cube's shape is very obvious. We do see some kind of objects on the surface of the cube. Of course, we don't know what they are, but it does seem like there's some kind of texture to it, if nothing else. Guess where this was not very far from? White Sands Military Testing Base, which is just kind of an interesting fact. You know, it's about 75 miles away, but interesting. Now, in February of 2020 at Medellin, Colombia, Airbus A320 had taken off and was flying at 30,000 feet. And the pilot saw a cube-shaped object that he and his others with him estimated to be 10 to 15 feet in diameter. This is a picture of Medellin, Colombia. Now this is blown up so that you can, it becomes a little fuzzy, but this is the cube. And I've seen the video as it gets closer and closer and closer. It does seem to be very interesting to see, and then as it flew by. Atlantic Ocean 2018, an F-18 fighter pilot recorded seeing an object and took photos at 35,000 feet. This is the object that he claimed that it was a cube shaped when he saw it. It looks a little different here, but nobody's been able to figure out exactly what it is. But at least this is the photo he was able to get rather quickly. Chesapeake, Virginia. This cube-shaped object was captured by a witness who reported that it had changed to a spherical object as well. So initially we see with a little image enhancement, you can see it's a very square or rectangular shape that it has. And then a few moments later, it's becoming more square perhaps. And this may be where it's moving towards a different shape. Not much else is known about this, but it had been posted online. April 5th, 2023, 200s were out hunting, and they noticed an object about 300 feet away and somewhere around 50 feet off the ground. And one had a chance to snap a photo. Strangely, the hunters completely forgot about it and continued hunting. It was only later when they got back home and were looking through their camera, they happened to even see it and then remember the whole experience. This is a rather difficult one to try to enhance, and so I just left it the way the original image was. Cleveland Heights, Ohio. The object is right over here when it's in some clouds, but then when it finally breaks free, it takes this shape, which is bit more rectangular than anything, but at least Matthew Young reported that this object and said that it was looking very cube-like. Now this is also not the greatest photo, but you can still see the cube-like shape to the object, released by the Senate Armed Services Committee in 2022. And there's many of you probably will have already seen the video as it's traveling through the various buildings and vehicles on the ground. Not much else to be said, but this was released. About 2 weeks ago, we had State Director Earl Gray was here at the Missouri MUFON meeting and made an interesting presentation. One of which he reported that they worked on, that he and his team worked on, was near a research submarine. The witness was inside taking some people on just a sightseeing trip. And they saw a transparent cube that came up alongside with a gold sphere inside, which was reportedly somewhere around 3 to 5 feet in diameter. Now, obviously, this is just an image to try to get an approximation of what it may have looked like. So this is not obviously a photo. June of 2022, Laura Mastera filmed this object from this balcony using an iPhone 13 Pro. Medellin is becoming known as the UFO capital of South America due to the frequency of sightings that they've been having. So this is the second one in this presentation. And this is what he says. I was outside in my backyard on a crystal clear day when I noticed to the north of me something metallic reflecting light in the sky about 500 to 1,000 feet above me. It looked like a metallic cube 1 second, a sphere another, and then changed or morphed into several geometric shapes while reflecting light from its different axes it was spinning on. I got my phone, started to record it. It traveled north to west to south. As it was traveling north to west, it looked like it was dropping perfectly symmetrical or geometric white teardrops. Looked kind of like Pac-Man pellets. As it traveled south, it shot up probably 3,000 to 4,000 feet, kept spinning, and either vanished or my phone wasn't able to focus on it. It made no sound. It looked like a three-dimensional metallic cube / sphere that kept morphing, reflecting light off all axes that it was spinning from. I think he means all the axes. I have 4 family members that are pilots, private and military, and they don't know what it is. I honestly don't think it was a weather balloon or drone or plane or helicopter. It blinked in and out of existence while it was rotating on its axis, reflecting light. The 2 videos that evidently he posted are the original and were shot with an iPhone XIII 4K. And yeah, the bar is hiding the top of the image. So
Is that a video?
okay, no,
Okay, because it looks like a video because there's
No.
a,
well,
yeah, there.
no, that's
okay,
there,
no.
it was a video, but I just took a screenshot. That's why you're seeing that. That's why it looks like it's going to be a video that's ready to play. So the original image is just this real small thing, and when I enhance it, enlarge it a bit, that's what you see. Now, Ian, who's in the presentation tonight. This is a case that I came across that was in New Fork, one that he had posted. And although the object was very small there, it's enhanced, you can see a square or rectangular shape to it. This particular object has both white and dark sides to it that were also rotating in various directions, just like it was tumbling. Turns out I then got in contact with Ian, and so in about 10 more cases, I'm going to actually show a bit more about this particular thing. Interesting thing to note, it was rotating very fast against the wind from Ian's report. Now I'm going to digress briefly here and talk about a system of gauging reliability of cases, and it's called the SVP case reporting system. It's developed by Jacques Vallée, who many of you will recognize the name as a famous French astronomer, astrophysicist. He has many hats. He and his wife moved to the US quite some time ago, back in the 70s, I believe. Although don't hold me to it. But at any rate, this is the system. The SVP stands for source, talking about reliability of source, site visit, and possible conclusion. And basically, it's a 5-point system which starts with a 0 and goes to 4. A source can be a number of things. It can be anything from a newspaper to a witness to a set of data or images and so on. And so in this case, you're the lowest level, which would be a 0, in which the source is considered unreliable or unknown. And at the height, you would have a field investigator in doing a personal interview with a witness. Then there's iterations in between. The next highest would be a reliable firsthand source. Then a reliable source, perhaps if it's still a second hand with observation or a source of information. Then just a known source, but unknown on a reliability scale of the source information. So you can kind of see how this goes. Under a visit, 0 would be no on-site visit was made. 1 would be site study by a person, or site visit or study by an untrained person, persons unfamiliar with UAPs. 2 would be a site visit by a person who is familiar with UAPs, but not a field investigator. 3 would be by somebody with much more higher familiarity, who is a field investigator. And then 4 would be a site study by a skilled analyst who has a specialty that's needed for the particular case. And then possible conclusions, 0 being it's totally either man-made or a natural cause, a star, whatever, up to unknown being the highest case in terms of this is definitely an unknown object, and all indications are such. In between, for example, the next highest one is most parameters support an unknown object, but there is just very, very slight indication or support for natural cause. 2 would be some data supports natural cause, but only 1 parameter supports unknown, and so on. So this is a method in which cases can be compared to give a sense of how reliable is this information. And the result is, for example, a 434. In that particular case, there was a personal interview of the source or of the witness, in this case, by a field investigator. 3, there was a site study that was conducted by an experienced field investigator. And then 4 would be, of course, the moniker of unknown. The reason I went into that to explain it is I decided to add some UFOCAT files as well in this presentation. And this is one case, 1974. It occurred in France. You can see in the map, it was in the center of France, at Boisy-la-Berchère. It had a classification of MA1. That means maneuver was taking place. A cube-shaped object flew in a haphazard manner. The object jerked around the field, jumped over hedges, and then shot away. Size was estimated to be 4 feet per side. The SVP rating of 103. The unknown source, so an unknown reliability. You don't know much about how reliable the person is. No on-site visit, but most parameters still support an unknown designation. And as I said earlier, this is the system that Jacques Vallée developed, I think primarily for his own use when he was has been called around all around the globe to be involved in various investigations. But as I've looked at it, it looks rather interesting. I think it might be good to provide a way of evaluating things from a field investigator perspective. Explainability of the rating of the report, it has a plus, which means that this report requires non-conventional explanation per the source. So conclusion that is unknown in that particular case. Another from UFOCAT, years 1954 in the Staroye, Russia, classification of CE3. And here I just got an image of a couple entities just to have something to look at. However, what was reported was a brown colored cube. That's probably the more important thing. Close encounter with entities is what a CE3 is. Close encounter of the third kind, like the movie, with entities in the vicinity of a UFO. There were 2 humanoids outside of a cube-shaped craft. Several witnesses were there to see the sighting. This is considered a type B. Local residents saw a UFO-shaped box or basket that flew towards the village of Staroye, Medicine, low altitude. There was a muffled humming, and 2 men of unusual appearance exited, did some tasks, and then went back into the cube. This one here also gave a better than average UFO report and was considered unknown. In Hampton Falls, New Hampshire in 1966, there was a CE2, a close encounter with physical effects. Witness described ground marks in the shape of a triangle approximately 6 feet per side between each leg. It was assumed the tripod had made the marks, and there had been a humming noise. The landing site was in a forest. There was a dome on the underside of the cube-shaped object that spun clockwise. The object shot straight up and disappeared. Interestingly, Seabrook nuclear plant is just 1.5 miles away to the southeast. You can see in the circle here, Hampton Falls is just right there, and then the nuclear plant is just right there, real close. The SVP rating on this one is a 3 for a first-hand reliable source. Site visit by a special analyst, and all parameters say unknown. In 1965, in what's considered the Rugged Islands in New Zealand, there was a close encounter one with no physical effects. Two witnesses had a close encounter with two cube-shaped UFOs, which were above the surface of the ocean, hovering about 16 feet or so in the air. There was some sound associated with the sighting. Now, for those of you who are familiar with New Zealand, there's two islands, the North Island and the South Island. The North Island is where most of the population lives, and the capital is in Auckland. But the Rugged Islands are just right there, also just right below the Southern Island. And anyway, so it was on one of the smaller islands down in that little tomb where this took place. And this graphic just tries to give an approximate what it may have looked like. Year is 1973, East Liverpool, Ohio. An MA1 maneuver. An object had discontinuous trajectory. There is no SVP rating on this one. There were multiple examples of hovering. The UFO was rotating and spinning, swooped up and swooped down, spinning before our eyes, then went sailing up, paused, and took off, shaped like a see-through box. It had colors red, blue, green, yellow, and pink. So this graphic was an attempt to try to give some kind of a feel for what it might have looked like. We don't know that for sure. And so this one is one that was also considered unknown. '84 at Prata, Italy. There was another close encounter of a third kind with no physical effects, but with an NHI, a non-human intelligence. The SVP rating on this is a 133. Known source, site study by an experienced investigator, most parameters supporting unknown. The quote from the case says, a man in an alfalfa field saw a hairy being in a suit plus a round helmet with a hose attached from neck to a rucksack on his back, and he was digging. Blue flames emitted from his body. There was a cube UFO right next to him that had two tubes coming out of it, and it made an acute turn when it was leaving. So this is as close as I was able to get an image, but I wasn't able to get the blue at the same time. So that's why I did a separate one just to show what it might have looked like. But this was a very unusual one, and I thought you might be interested, but once again, it was a cube-shaped object. Nivelles, France, a flyby. Nivelles is towards Paris, a little above the center. It was labeled as a flyby one. A flyby four, by definition, is a transformation of the individual who witnesses reality. And I just wonder if it might not have been a better way to classify it with an FE4, but the case itself had an FE1. The write-up said that the cube itself was about 100 feet long. It was gray colored. It had some windows, and it had beams of light shooting out of it. It turned northeast and went away. And this is why I think the transformation of his reality might be a better label, because it says the observer felt calm as a result of the experience. It has an SVP of 103, known source, no on-site study, and most parameters are supporting unknown. The type showed that there were 4 different independent persons who witnessed the event. And so once again, this is an unknown as well. In Rémy, France, there was a flyby. The cube flew by 2 police witnesses. Has an SVP rating of 203. Reliable secondhand sources. No on-site visit. Most parameters support unknown. It was a landed vehicle. 2 police officers viewed the event. The object was about 165 feet wide. That's a big one. A semi-transparent cube with square windows, which flew slowly toward the west. They don't know, they just conjectured it may have landed remotely. And this too was also considered an unknown. Interestingly enough, too, you can't see it, at least on my screen, says I'm talking, but that's covering up a little indicator. Actually, this sighting at Rémy is just a stone's throw away from the famous ski slopes in the Alps at Grenoble. So that's where that one's located. And then the last one I've added December 15th of last year in Toronto. Ian says he started to take the video at 4 p.m. It's an FB1 flyby incident in which the cube flew to the sky at from about an 80-degree angle of observation above his home. He said it traveled east against a crosswind from the south. Now, this one wasn't from UFOCat, but if I was to begin to use that system, I would give it a 424. Personal interview with the witness, site studied by a person familiar with the phenomena, and all parameters indicate unknown. What we have here is a case of an object. In fact, within about 20 minutes, the video itself is very, very long, but at around 6 minutes into the video, there's a first object that drops down to the sky, and you can see it spinning as it's going down. And then 19 minutes into it, you see the new one. That's what some of these frames are that I selected. And these are just caught, as I said, as it's spinning, and you just see whichever face it happens to have at that moment. Now, I went through and this took 12 frames out of the 60 that were in the sequence as it was dropping through the video, and then I stacked them. And this is what it does. I didn't realize in watching the video that it didn't go straight. In this particular case, you can see that it was actually not going particularly straight. Unless there was a chance that it was, there's always possibility, and I did not ask the witness, if it was on a tripod. I'm assuming it was, since it was quite a long time that the video was going.
It was on a tripod, Larry.
It was on, okay. Then in that case, then this is an actual trajectory of what was taking place. And it just a sample, but you can see how it's changing. When you see the video, and it's such a large file, I was afraid it was going to take up some of the resources and cause me to lock up on this. But at any rate, this at least gives us an idea what's happening as it goes through. But when you watch the video, you can actually see it moving from different side to side as they move through their turns and so on, moving in all 6 directions.
I can show the video if you want when you're finished.
Okay. When I've been talking about cubes, so often someone will ask the question, isn't the cube shape not very aerodynamic? And that's a question that's often asked when one frame of reference clouds the possibilities. The assumption follows what science often assumes, that the knowledge which we currently have attained about physics are applicable to NHIs as well. Well, that's not necessarily a very good way to look at reality. The error is in assuming that what we're dealing with crafts that work within the frameworks of traditional physics. And to place those restrictions on those who either have traveled light years to arrive here or have come from a different parallel dimension is somewhat insane. From a Neanderthal's perspective, cell phones would be magical. Their frame of reference was based on wood, fire, wind, stone, and water. We're dealing with entities whose vehicles travel potentially thousands of miles per hour, make no sonic booms or effects, don't make any ripples when they enter water, etc. So a silly cube shape is nothing. We should never ask that question. Is it not aerodynamic? It doesn't seem to matter even for aerodynamic craft. They don't seem to affect the air. You don't hear the noise, etc. So that's just an interesting question that sometimes gets posed. What is there about a cube shape that might be interesting to know? Well, it could be used for cargo, for example. A cube-shaped vehicle would be more efficient using space to transport cargo. It makes packing and organizing much easier, especially for large quantities of equipment. It has the potential for modular architecture. The cube shape works well with that kind of construction. It lends itself to easily expanding or customizing for additional components. It has structural integrity. The cube is inherently structurally strong. It provides a rigid geometry with equal length sides, robustness, and protection. And this would be needed for potentially exploratory vehicles or military uses or whatever. Habitability, that a design permits uniform living and working spaces. It also promotes equality and resource allocation, at least potentially, and access to services that would be on board the object. Sensor placement with multiple flat surfaces, mounting various kinds of equipment would be rather easy to do, particularly for scientific missions or surveillance or for whatever reason. But once again, these are kind of assuming what we would do with them. So from our perspective, at least, this is why a cube shape at least could be potentially considered, yeah, actually not a bad way of going, especially if you're not having to worry about things such as affecting the wind or the wind affecting the cube as it traveled and so on, aerodynamics. So we shouldn't assume that NHIs using the cube would not be doing other things that beyond what we could potentially imagine. Given the increase in sightings, at least one can only wonder what this means. Is this a real increase? Have they always been there, but just been reported as square and rectangular? Is the increase due to the huge increase in cell phones now? Or are we just not getting the reason why, and we need further research as time goes by? If we compare the quantity of UFOs in the largest of the top 7 categories with this rather newly emergent trend with cubes, there are some interesting things to observe. The largest group are the spheres, as I mentioned, over a span of 54 years, who had been cataloged in MUFON, and that's not taking all the other reporting agencies, just looking at MUFON alone. Reports average in that time period of about 406 sightings per year over that period of time. Now, if we just compare only just what's been going for the last 12 months, since the year of 2023, which has seemingly the highest rate of sightings of any of the previous years, or especially decades, but there have been an average of 233 reports per year since just the year 2023. Now, that's of course not comparing apples to apples and so on. But it's just an interesting insight. At least the rate is 233 reports per year for the year of 2023. Now, will that hold? Only time will tell as we get more data and see if the number of reports continue to increase. And so if we plotted those on a graph, we see right where we're at right now, it's right here. If it continues at that rate and in both directions, there would be a meeting sometime where their cubes would be about the same point as the spheres in 2050. If the spheres really are at just kind of a leveling off period, and if the cubes just doubled only, there would be an intersection in 13 years. But what are the real totals? Well, when we look at the cubes, that's one category. UFOCAT also includes polygons in their observation. And then, I've got to think that anything that's considered a square or a rectangle is not just going to be a flat object. It's going to have some dimension to it. It's going to have probably pushed out. And it could very well be that that's just a cube that has not been seen other than one dimension, one side. So at least in my thinking, that's probably a cube. It just looked squarish, and we can't really say, or the witness didn't have the ability to say it was anything further than that. But if in fact that's what those are, because like I said, you're not going to have just a square sheet of paper that is going to reflect metal. There's going to be something more beyond that. So let's just assume for a moment that those actually were cubes. That could be potentially a total of 8,488. So that's just the mind kind of running with it and saying, well, what are the possibilities, if we apply the same percentage that cubes had in one of those first charts I showed at the beginning, that would mean that of the 8,000 or so, about 2,520 roughly would be considered unknown. That's still a fair high number, but at least it gives us something to think about. And it's kind of fun to look at projections, but we also have to say at the same time, we can't say with any scientific means whatsoever that that's the exact case, exact amount, and so on. We can't really predict how many will be seen in the skies, how many people will see them, or even report them of those that do see them. What we can observe is that something does seem to be going on. Either they have just been reported now, but have always been around. It's probably less likely, just because there have been all these other shapes that are being reported. And so surely there would have been reports of cubes, and maybe there have been as squares and rectangles, who knows? But that's why it's probably not something that's been here, but just missed. It could be that they were previously noticed that is counted as being typical UFOs because it didn't look like a typical UFO. Or there's a potential for that it's really a legitimate increase in the number of cubes that are happening, that are arriving. But there's no way of knowing for sure. I guess the only thing we can say is time will probably give us much more information as we go forward. So Margie, that's the end of that. But if you have that video and want to show that, that
Yes,
would
I
be
will.
good.
I will show that video and then we can take questions. If I can get this. Here we go. Now, it's important to note that Ian took this, that this is actually looking, he took it horizontally, but it's showing vertically. So it's going east to west or west to east. I don't know. He'll tell us.
And if
Okay.
I understand, it started out almost directly at the zenith. It was 80 to 90 degrees, is what he was saying.
Yeah. Ian, do you want to chime in here?
Yeah, Margie, I don't know if you have the file that was recorded at 4 o'clock. The 345 one doesn't really show the shape that well, but it's still pretty good. The object is traveling from west to east, and because the camera's pointed up pretty high, it's at about an 80-degree angle. It looks like it's falling, but it's not. It's actually traveling across the sky. So if you saw a bird flying through, the bird would look like it's falling as well from that vantage point.
Do you happen to have that handy on your computer that you could bring it up?
Sadly, I'm on a laptop where I don't have any files on it. Larry, do you have that other one, the one from 4 o'clock? It just is so much better in terms of just the shape as it comes through. The one thing I did want to say though is just what I thought you did that was really great there, Larry, is just showed the path and that wobble. Because there were two more things that came through on the 19th, it always came through at about the same speed with that same wobble. It almost looks like a spine that's kind of out of alignment, the way it just kind of I don't know, just the path that it takes. So it's not coming straight through.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not seeing it right offhand. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and take your mutes off and ask Larry anything you'd like. William, do you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to comment that I thought that was a very interesting presentation. I'd heard and seen of some of these cubes recently, but I was thinking like, wow, is this something new, or is this a one-off cube thing, or why are we getting them? So I'm glad to hear, yeah, there is a increase in it. So thank you, Larry, for presenting this tonight.
Oh, thank you.
So Larry?
Yeah.
This is Bill Weber. Question for you. What kind of signature are these cubes showing on radar? And in some of the slides you showed, they were like transparent. Are they actually appearing on radar, or are these, a majority of these reports coming in are visual sightings?
I don't know that there's any data of radar sightings so far, with the exception potentially of the one that the armed services released. Most of these are just photos, and then of course there's just some of those that I was showing with just an artistic perspective on what it might look like, since there wasn't any photo. I wanted to at least have something to tease the mind as maybe what it was looking like. But you know, those images that were added in the UFOCAT files were just an attempt to give a similarity or a semblance of what it might have looked like.
Gotcha. So I guess could they be somewhat treated like orbs, or are they appearing in groups, multiple groups, like we would normally see, like on some UAPs and such, that are both visual as well as radar tracking?
Almost all of the ones that I found to report on were single. I ran across one that I showed that had two of them that were next to each other. I did hear of one case, but I didn't pursue it for this presentation, in which there were several. But most of the time, at least from what I've seen, it's just been one. I did scan through the UFOCAT files, and there was several hundred in there, but most of them were just the single cube.
Okay, thank you.
Larry, I
question.
have the Springfield video queued up. I'll go ahead and play that, and then we'll take more questions.
Sure.
And Margie, I've got the video for you if I can screen share.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious that it's rotating. And once again, it's in rotating in all six different directions. So all six planes of the cube.
Jumping back and forth. I'm on Glenstone in Springfield, Missouri. That is a cube spinning on an axis, flickering. It's got lights around it in the middle of the day. In the middle of the day.
And Ian, if you want to go ahead and show your video, share screen.
Yeah, pardon my ignorance with this stuff. I'm going to have to I'm not used to sharing. So what do I do? You're
At the bottom,
resident-
at the bottom, you see a share screen. It's
I've got it on
green.
camera.
So
What?
click on that.
I
Name-
see. I may be on. Oh, wait a minute. One sec. The bottom where it says, yep, I see. Okay, here we go. And then here's my file. And tell me, are you seeing that?
Not yet, but it's coming up. There you go.
Oh, okay, I'll hit play. This is just the exposure is a little bit better than the other, so it shows the object a little bit more clearly. Oops, we're not playing here. There we go.
Thank you, Ian. Does anybody else have any questions for Larry?
I have one, Margie.
Yes.
I know, without sounding stupid, this is so bizarre almost, these things. I mean, we don't see the so-called flying saucers doing all these flips and turns on all the axes. And that, is there any alternative explanation for these? Like maybe a box flew off a FedEx plane that was perhaps filled with helium, and it's, you know, doing this. I mean, it's just such an odd thing. I mean, you can't believe really humanoids are in there under Earth physics, because they'd be, you know, almost like scrambled eggs. Or, you know, is this maybe what people from another planet do, come here and try and experience Earth gravity at 32 feet per second per second? It just seems so weird to me.
Yeah, you're right. It's not one a thing that we can normally understand. It's certainly not the first time that I've seen that kind of either movement or spinning in other objects too. I've seen them in other. In fact, some you just can't even describe what it looks like. It's just weird. So the fact that it's happening on some of the cubes seems to be about the same percentage that are happening, at least the ones that I've looked at, not necessarily just only the ones of this presentation, but I've looked at a lot of others, both in MUFON as well as MUFOR, UFOCAT, and there's apparently just a smaller group that seemed to be doing that kind of spinning. Much of the time, it just looked like just a regular old cube, which in itself is different enough.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, I mean, I think we've all seen videos of the flying saucer type, where those will spin around on a vertical axis. And, you know, you wonder, well, maybe that's providing centrifugal force in the thing to mimic gravity or that. But it's just like, this is so bizarre. I just don't know what would the purpose of it be. And are there any alternative theories for this being something other than extraterrestrial? I can't imagine the Chinese government floating something like this over our airspace, or the country of France, or, you know, our government having a secret project, even though that one was by White Sands. You know, you just wonder, like, did they shoot something out or drop it from a weather balloon, or I don't know. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's hard to describe either a designation or a reason as to why. In some ways, that's probably just way beyond our ability, and that's, of course, if it's a real thing.
Yeah.
But from at least what we were able to capture on videos and so on, it's something that's taking place. It doesn't seem to be anything that's that we normally would be able to explain. Especially when you have something that's continuing to go through the sky like that. Is it possible that it's a balloon? I don't know that it would be spinning that quickly if it was some kind of a cube-shaped balloon, but, you know, I don't know.
Well, let's
So-
take a look. Excuse me. Let's take a look at how this whole thing started. When somebody saw something, I said, "Gee, it looks like somebody threw a saucer in the air," right? And then that has migrated over to orbs or circles or spheres, and then that has migrated over to triangles, and now it's migrated over to tic-tac type shapes. So who knows? This might be the new shape of things to come.
Yeah. Just as a follow-up, I know we're considered all ufologists here, but has MUFON or New Fork or anyone come up with an alternative theory? Like, you know, MUFON might say it's a, I don't know, government project. New Fork might say, well, we think it's extraterrestrial. Do you know anything like that, Margie or Larry?
No, that I don't know of any agency making a statement like that. Just classifying them as unknowns.
Can I put in
Okay.
2 cents here?
Yes.
Sure.
Could they be probes? You know, something that spins and gets some kind of information that way, like our satellites do?
I suppose that's a possibility. It's until we know a lot more data. And unfortunately, that's kind of the case with most UAPs. It's hard for us to be able to say exactly what they are, you know, especially the orbs and whatever. Are they potentially an advanced drone? That's one thing that's been floated by some people, but we can't say, yes, we know that that's what it is. We just can't make that kind of an assertion. Is that what the cube is? Just another version? Yeah, maybe. You know, there was some that were very large in the group that I was talking about in the presentation, that I don't know if that would be a drone with that kind of a size. But I mean, that's once again a human making an arbitrary decision on something that may not be able to be conceived of by who we are and our technology yet.
Got a question from James Bear.
Yeah, Larry, fantastic presentation. I wondered, have you given any thought that these might be time travelers from our future coming back to look and study us?
I have no way of being able to say anything about that at all. I mean, that's possible for almost all UAPs, I suppose. I mean, that's just one possibility, but it's been floated by some people. And why is it that we're just now seeing them really in the last 20 years, especially the last 13, or people are noticing them? Well, that's a good question.
Are we seeing
Thanks a
any
lot, Larry.
propulsion characteristics from these things?
What was the first part of the question that didn't come through? I'm sorry.
Are we seeing any characteristics of propulsion, like heat signatures or cold signatures or whatever type of a signature? Are these basically just free falling?
The ones that I've looked into, most did not give any kind of a description of that that type. About the only thing was that on a number of them, maybe 20 to 25% of them, I'd have to go back and look now, but they talked about some kind of a humming or a noise, which seems to be a little bit higher percentage than you find with the average UAP.
Right.
That's about the only thing I observed there, but that's by no means a complete look at all cases, and most of them don't give those kinds of descriptions that I have found.
Is anybody tracking where they start? In other words, where they come from and where they go to? Or could these be classified almost like an interdimensional? They're here and then they're gone.
Once again, it's something I think a lot of us would like to know.
Yeah.
And the same would be true about whether you're talking about a saucer or a sphere or a tic tac, or, you know, are they just coming from some basis in the ocean or under a lake, or are they coming from somewhere else, from another dimension? That's a good question. We do notice in the case of many of the ones around the water many do come into water or come out from water. And I observed that myself back in Missouri in many cases on a daily basis. Dozens and dozens of them all coming up from or going into a lake. And there's just as many people who've made observances in the ocean as well.
Yeah, I know Carl Fine did a lot of work on USOs.
Right.
Larry, first of all, thank you for doing this, because there probably aren't a lot of researchers out there that are spending the time to collate and do the deep dive into this, because I'd never heard of cubes really before what happened with me in December. And then all of a sudden now I'm kind of obsessed with them. So my question for you is, have you found with other reports, like with mine on the 19th, I had 2 come through, maybe 3, but on the 15th where I think the video was better, there were two examples. How many other cases have had witnesses have these things come over again, where they've seen them maybe on another day, but traveling the same path? Because that was the thing that was the most astounding thing to me, is to go, oh, here they are again. So is this something you've seen before?
There is one that has a video that was the first one that I included in the presentation from Springfield, and Margie showed that one just a few minutes ago. It could be that one seems to be more static in one location, just kind of moving around, but not really going anywhere like the one that Ian showed did, which seemed to be going, I guess, away from his perspective. But,
It went, Larry, that went over toward the airport. That was on my case. It went over to a smaller airport.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
I'm glad you mentioned that, James, because you had a sighting by an airport near you.
That was the Springfield Cube UFO sighting.
Yeah, I
The
don't
first
know.
one.
How close would Justin Jordan have been from the international airport when that
7 miles.
Yeah, and I'm 10 miles east of the airport, and then if you continue east from where I am, there's a nuclear power plant 20 miles from me, and then there's another one 10 miles further east than that. So I'm in line with the international airport and 2 power plants, nuclear power plants. So I'm glad you brought that up, James. That's interesting.
I'd like to follow up on one thing Bill said and what we're talking about now, Bill Weber, that from what I've seen of your examples here, Larry, they all seem to be in free fall. Is that just me and Bill's perception, or is that your perception and other ufologists too, that they don't actually look like they're flying over us, or that it looks like they're just falling from the sky?
Well, that's only in a couple cases where we don't have much in terms of what happened after that. There's a number of cases where we just have some stills, and so we don't know really what happened.
Right.
But like from the pilots, there was that one over Medellin where they were in an A320, and that was definitely one that was flying. The one that was seen by the fighter pilot, the F-18, that was also a matter of flight and going by. So there's a number of them that were flying, but there's also many of them that were either like some of the first UFO-CAT ones had to do also with being seen kind of going along the ground and kind of skipping over things and then eventually taking off. There's really quite a number of different things happening, everything from stationary with beings on the outside to some flying like the one that Ian was showing, and like the one that Margie just showed in Springfield, where they definitely were staying in the air and doing something, going in a direction. Then there's others that were just, we don't know for sure because all we have is a snapshot or two. But, you know, there are some examples of falling, but not very many, at least from what I've come across so far.
Okay, but normally we don't see that with a so-called flying saucer UAP. I mean, those usually may come down gently, but they usually are seen going across or shooting up in the sky at great speed. So it does seem like these cube things are a little different flight characteristics than the typical UAP.
Yeah, could be.
Okay.
Do these things, Larry, do these things tend to congregate around military sites / nuclear facilities, or they're just random and people spot them?
So what I've seen so far is more random than anything. Out of the ones that I've looked at, there was the one that I showed, it was just a mile and a half away from a nuclear plant. I seem to recall, I didn't include it in the report, but in the UFOCAT files, there was at least one other. What I ought to do next is look in they have 3 categories of nuclear site visits by different UFOs. And it'll be interesting to see how many might be in those groups, you know, just out of curiosity. But that does bear further looking into.
Yeah, other than the fact that someone said it sounded like a hum, are there any other characteristics that these things could exhibit, like a typical, let's say like a CE3 or CE4? People have after effects, animals go crazy, static, all of the above. Is any of these type of conditions presenting themselves when these things are sighted, or they just, oh, what's that up in the sky that's reflecting light on me?
Well, you know, this is my research is just kind of in the early stages. It's by no means complete. And of the group that I presented, the only one that I had that showed any effect was where the person felt calmed as a result of the sighting, which is kind of unusual. But at any rate, it'd be interesting to see if there are others like that. I don't know what the frequency is just in general for all observances of UAPs. That too would be interesting to see what kind of effects are. My suspicion is that it's rather low, but you know, in terms of the grand scheme. But once again, I'm just shooting from the hip on that one. I don't have enough hard data.
Right, and I guess because they are random and they're singular as opposed to multiples, that radar would have a heck of a time trying to pick them up to differentiate them from, let's say, a bird or a drone or something.
Maybe in the case of a really large one, that would be a little different story, but you know, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, good questions.
I have a question.
Anybody else?
I have a
Yeah, Greg.
question. Hey, Larry, how you doing?
Good to see you.
Yeah, great presentation. I really enjoyed it. I was kind of interested in cubes. So I was kind of confused because it seemed like a lot of people are sort of like unfamiliar with cubes. Is that really what I heard, or did I misunderstand something?
What do you mean by unfamiliar with cubes in terms of UAPs or?
Yeah, the most famous cube sightings were from 2015 on the east coast of the U.S., where Theodore Roosevelt pilots saw cubes every day, multiples of them, gray cubes in clear spheres. It's a very common thing now. So I was just sort of curious about that. I know that you referenced something about cubes have been more popular in the last 13 years, and that kind of fits with the 2015 sighting. But as the discussion was going, I didn't really hear any reference back to the USS Teddy Roosevelt sightings that were pretty popular. That's why Ryan Graves is as famous as he is, because of the gray cubes inside the clear spheres. And cubes seem to be the new thing. For a while it was tic tacs, now it's cubes.
Yeah. Well, I had not run across that particular point anywhere. I was trying to stick with what I could find in reports that had been filed, and so I had not run across that in what I was looking at. But I've been doing this for about half a year now, so I'm just getting started. I
Well,
appreciate that reference, though. It'll be interesting to look.
That does seem to be like a bizarre thing. In the 1800s, everybody was seeing aerial ships, right? Like the balloons. And it seems like in every era, people are seeing sort of what's common in that era. And because of the Tic Tac incident with the USS Nimitz mission with Commander Fravor, I think everybody was basically shocked to hear Ryan Graves talk about the objects they saw were gray cubes and round spheres. And at that point, nobody knows what the heck is going on. But that's what all the pilots were seeing apparently daily. And, you're not going to hear that on the evening news, but that's basically what was going on. And so now whenever I hear anything about cubes, my ears perk up and the skin starts going up on the back of my neck. And that's why I wanted to check out and see what people are talking about with cubes. So that's why I'm here. So again, great information.
Oh, thank you.
Really enjoyed it.
Anybody else?
It is interesting too that your reference to the airships, it makes you wonder, was that done for people of a certain level of technology, just so that they had a better sense of familiarity with something they understood?
That's one of the things out there is, I think James was asking about time travelers. Well, that's obviously a thing now. And now Grush very probably correctly is now calling everything non-human intelligence instead of extraterrestrials. And that was sort of the maddening thing about the most recent report that came out is, again, they're saying, they haven't found any extraterrestrials. Well, it doesn't mean they didn't find non-human intelligence. It just means they didn't find any extraterrestrials. So, it seems like whatever it is somehow seems to cause us, the humans, to see different things sometimes. Is that's what you see when you research this. And that is one of the common things that you hear is several people see something and they all report something different or different enough to where, what's going on. And you also hear that they can control the mind in some ways. That's the sixth observable and nobody talks about. So I'm sure I've said too much already. I'm sorry.
No, it's well done. Appreciate your thoughts on the subject.
Larry, when you've been spending 6 months on this, are you planning to continue doing the research? And then because you're an author, are you planning maybe to publish, what your findings are over time?
Well, first of all, I'll have to have a lot more information than I currently do. I have enough for an hour presentation now, and just skimming the surface. I do think it would be very interesting, and I do plan to continue to research into this as I have time. One of these days we're going to be able to be working on files as we have want to be in the past, but right now we're kind of in a lull. But once things get hot and heavy again, it always eats into your time. But the short answer is, yeah, I do plan on continuing.
No, that's great to hear. Thanks.
So if anybody sees a cube, be sure to let Larry know.
Yes.
Or if you get a report of cube UFOs. All
Yeah,
right.
like
with that-
the valet system, the SVP says, you can actually have some good information, even if it's from another source.
Well, I've got my
Depends on
camera
the-
out, Larry, and if I get any more, you will be the first to know. I guarantee that.
Appreciate it, Ian.
Larry,
all right. Oh, James,
Larry, in the early 1980s, I worked on a fisheries research ship from NOAA called the MacArthur, and we were doing marine mammal research surveys along the Catalina Islands. Larry, those cubes have been there longer than just recently. We were seeing things like that on a daily basis in the evenings, in the night, in the morning, going in and out of the water. They're not new.
I appreciate that, Jim, because that's one of the reasons why I think that just seeing a rectangular or a square shape in the sky is probably also a cube, what we would call cuboid at least. It's just a gut feeling about it, because like I said, you can't just have a one-dimensional plane that you're looking at, but it is probable that many of those reports of squares and rectangles are in fact cubes themselves, or cuboid, which would then say, yeah, they've been around a lot longer than we think. And if that's the case, then that'll be interesting. I'll have to do that. I'll have to chart when they were seen. That's going to be a much bigger task, but I can still do it. When were squares and rectangles seen, and then add that to the timeline of the cubes and see what we get. See how far
well,
back.
if anybody can do it, you can, Larry. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining, and thank you very much, Larry. That was very interesting. Very well done.
Thank you.
And Margie, thank you for putting this together. And Larry, thank you for your presentation.
Appreciate it, Bill.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
You
See
all
you guys next month.
stay
Same bat
safe
channel,
out there.
same bat time.
Have a good month, everybody. Thank you. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.